Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland. Here I'm in London at Old Bond Street, one of London's most iconic shopping streets. So it's where it abuts onto Piccadilly, not called Piccadilly Street, simply Piccadilly. But anyway, I'll hurry up away from the noise of Piccadilly. It's early on a Sunday morning, hence hardly anybody's about. So there is no Bond Street as such. People are always talking about Bond Street. It's either Bond Street or Old Bond Street. So one of London's premier shopping streets. It's got all sorts of luxury brands. See De Beers behind me, the South African diamond company, and they're the ones who coined the term diamonds are forever, or is it diamonds are a girl's best friend? Diamonds are a girl's best friend, part of that Marilyn Monroe song. Well, she didn't actually sing it, I believe she mimed it. And Diamonds Are Forever, that Dame Shirley Bassey number, which is obviously a James Bond film. So there we are. Anyway, so if you've got more money than sense, this is where you'll come to get togged out. So it's exceedingly expensive. These are sort of flagship shops because the property is extremely expensive. So obviously you can mail order these things, order online, but they just have it really for the prestige. If we have a premises on Bond Street, then we are a serious player in the fashion market. There you can go for a pair of clogs. Okay, so maybe you get the idea of what it's about. I have to keep zigzagging to show you the kind of things that they're selling on both sides of the street. You know, there's Dax, that French fashion label. May surprise you've never bought anything here. A few watches. Me, I just look at my phone, all right? Okay, another one, another Swiss watchmaker. Damiani, I don't even know what they sell. Then there's Omega, also watches. Okay, and Gucci. I never heard of Gucci. What's Gucci about? Oh, sorry, it's Gucci. They're often Italian and so on. The United Kingdom's not known for its fashion. Jaeger LeCoultre. I don't know what Coultre is. Jaeger as in hunter, but I don't think it's really anything to do with hunting. So it's a French fashion label, Bottega Veneta. Okay, well, Italy, such a visual culture. There's more of Gucci. So Bond Street, and Admiral Lord Nelson lived here for a while. I think this was the last house he lived in before he sailed off to Trafalgar, where he met his doom. Prada. The devil wears it, by the way. So there was some Yves Saint Laurent. Now, I remember in 2005, I was coming here for a job interview, curiously. No, not because I wanted to work in fashion. And who did I see on Old Bond Street but Sir Roger Moore? I'm not joking. He is Old Bond, and he's been followed by the paparazzi. So Roger Moore, who unfortunately was called to the great big studio in the sky 2 years ago. I remember when I came back and I was walking past Buckingham Palace only days after his demise, and the band was playing the James Bond theme tune, and presumably in tribute to him. Hey, the arcade. So you can't go through there at night, the little gate's there, but otherwise it's sort of open to the air, lots of small shops along there, Bond Street Arcade. Remember Eden, there was Taylor of Old Bond Street and Outfitters. So anyway, anybody who's anyone in haute couture will have a premises here. Chatil, I never even heard of them. There's Oxbridge Applications, as in helping you get to Oxford or Cambridge or getting into various other universities. They have an office here. It must cost a pretty penny. And maybe you get the idea. Stella McCartney. Now, she's the daughter of Sir Paul McCartney, the Beatle. Tiffany & Co. Well, you can't go there for breakfast. You may have heard of Breakfast of Tiffany's. Who's it by? Truman Capote with that Miss Ingo Lightly. I can't remember. Well, I have actually read it. I've not seen the film starring Audrey Hepburn. Look at that. Look at that for a building. And all the coats of arms up high, symbols of angels and so on. Okay, so Bond Street. You're getting the idea. And mercifully, nobody's around. That's the back of the Royal Academy of Arts. Filmed that probably sometime. Ralph Lauren, nice. And a lot of these places, you'll see security guards, you know, for coming in and out because they're selling diamonds and watches and so on. I was only 3 streets away in 2009 when there was that armed robbery. It wasn't me, I swear. I've got an alibi. There are about 20 people there. Boodles, okay. More Ralph Lauren. His name is actually Lifshitz. I wonder why he changed his name to Ralph Lauren. Why not Richard Lifshitz? Okay, Cartier. Very nice. And people seldom look up high and see just how splendid that building is, just how well crafted it is. May go in there for some togs a bit later. Graf. I think this is the diamond place that got robbed in 2009, that July. So they'd obviously done some reconnaissance. I believe it was a Serbian gang, but they had a few Britons and Somalis involved, I think. Anyway, so they came along, they took a member of female staff hostage, and they knew what they're going for in terms of all the diamonds and stuff. and then they took it out and they fired a shot in the street. They got into one car, and then they drove like a mile, got into another car, and that was it. And supposedly most of them were out of the country within hours. But the police did manage to arrest some of them because, as disguises, they hadn't worn masks, of course. That would ring alarm bells. They had gone for this special makeup session beforehand. Men, I know. They said it was for a pop video, and one of them was overheard saying to the makeup artist, "Even my own mother wouldn't recognize me now." And then they committed their robbery. So that was that. There have been a number of robberies here. So obviously there's a hue and cry about it, but several of the gang were apprehended and given sentences of up to 18 years because they took someone hostage. Although that woman was only held hostage for like a minute, they fired a shot in a crowded street. I think not intended to kill anyone, but just scare people off. They'd obviously threatened people with death in order to get their hands on the goodies, and that was that. So it doesn't happen very often in this city. But you know, it's a one-way street. It's not many ways in and out. One of the things that make it more difficult to rob is it's difficult to make a getaway. So that is a bit of Bond Street. Old Bond Street comes onto New Bond Street. There's Roosevelt and Churchill. I'll do a talk about them one time. As Lawrence Rees wisely pointed out, who's missing there? Conspicuous by his absence is Comrade Stalin, the one who really won the Second World War. Well, I mean, I suppose it's really despite him rather than because of him, because he was so incompetent and so absolutely savagely cruel to his own people that made some Soviets think that actually the Third Reich had to be mild by comparison. So Christian Dior, and on and on. So this is the place to come if you've got oodles of money. Well, I don't have cash to burn, so strangely I don't kick myself out on this stuff. Look, Chanel. Don't pronounce it channel, all right? It's got one N, not two. So I often think this is where a bomb must have fallen. You see this next building, this rather hideous 1950s ferroconcrete construction with these whatever abstract sculptures in the middle, because much of the rest of the street is 19th century. And see, Burberry was considered quite chic until about 2000, and then the Burberry brand or little label, that sort of tartan thing, became an essential part of Chauve culture. Look, Hermès, which is to do with horse racing in France, as in Hermes from Greek mythology. So their scarves and so on. So not that you're actually going to be a jockey, but if you attend horse races, it is de rigueur to be kitted out in their clobber. Okay, so we're in an area called Mayfair, which is very plush, crossing over Conduit Street. Okay, and yet more chouchous. So, does anybody need some foot gear? If so, come here and you'll be well shod. Okay, Miu Miu. Perhaps you're beginning to get a flavour of the place. So it's all walking distance. It's not a very broad street. It's not a very high street. Not very high rise, perhaps I should say. There's Nelson's house behind me, the Admiral's house, and some shoes. All right, I go to Shoe Zone myself. They used to have shoes for £5, but they'd last about 5 weeks, so it was a false economy, I suppose. There you go. And an art gallery, Pablo Picasso. No, not a brown-fingered artist, the Spanish chap who practiced having no perspective, going out with women about a third of his age. Chloe. So as a Spaniard, he spent almost his entire adult life in France. And yet more of these, by a dead artist. You know, death is a career move. It hugely enhances the values of your work. Sotheby's, the art dealers. Fendi, never heard of them. Zeely. And look up high. Aren't they splendid? Those 19th century buildings. Okay, here's a bag. No, not a plastic bag. Something a bit plusher than that. And there you get an idea. Ooh. So there was a bit of a pavement I hadn't realised. So now you know what Bond Street is about. Will anyone buy me a present? So, anyway, don't go to Oxford Street. Oxford Street's kind of mid-market. Really, the very upmarket brands are here on Bond Street. So there was New Bond Street down the bottom end towards Piccadilly. I'm going slightly uphill, and this is Old Bond Street. When I pass the Statue of the Rivals, it comes to Old Bond Street. Here are Rolex watches. Smithson, never heard of them. Well, I'm not a fashion victim, perhaps you can tell. Bali, not the Indonesian island. Bali, how do you pronounce it? Okay, shows what I know. Crossing over, red light, but nobody's around. And a few handbags. Over there, Breitling, I don't even know what they sell. Okay, and over here, Canali, another Italian brand. Kind of faceless if you ask me. Haha, look at the mannequins, they really are faceless. But actually mannequins are always faceless. Mulberry, round and round the mulberry bush. Like that 1950s children's television program, Emporio Armani. So go into that Emporium. Now, what's the next street up? Dolce & Gabbana, Sweet and Coat, as in the surnames of the two men who founded it. Okay, and over here we have Hugo Boss. That's right, Hugo Boss styling the SS. Surprising they don't put the double S in his name into those sort of lightning bolt letters for S. Because honestly, he did design the SS uniforms. They're curious they don't have one in the uniform. Fenwick, it's not pronounced Fenwick. Joe Malone, ooh. And my favorite Victoria's Secret, I can't find it in my size though. There you are, my God, that catalogue when I was a schoolboy really helped me grow up. So that's that. And over here, okay, down towards Hanover Square, Jimi Hendrix's house down there, Handel's house, not as in door handle, as in the German composer. Cross over here, I don't know what they're redoing, but up high it looks rather smart. Red light, but nobody's coming. Okay, Russell and Bromley. They're not very posh, are they? Yeah, these men's shoes with heels. Don't understand it myself, I find that exceedingly uncomfortable. My mother used to slip on my dad's shoes years ago, back in the days when women couldn't wear flat-heeled shoes. I said, my goodness, men's shoes are so comfy, no wonder women are happy to stand around all day. Okay. And lots of little statues built in up high. How about that? How artful. And what's this? Galerie Bartou, another French thing. Well, this is art, is it? Pop art, I suppose. Oh, and more, okay, Jodhpur boots, as in Jodhpur in India. Bonhams, I don't even know what you sell. Art, is it? Mephisto, like Mephistopheles, but selling shoes, all right? Watches of Bond Street. Well, their awning has seen better days. It's decidedly dusty. Philip, fucking hell, what is this? Talk about bling. Tasteless, vulgar if you ask me. Well, you have to ask me because I'm doing the video. And what is that about? No, watches of Switzerland. Swiss Army watches. No, not watches, knives. Okay, corkscrews out. Tweezers out. Things for getting stones out of horses' hooves out. That's how they'd fight. Don't get all the blades out and then juggle it. Now, I'm a bit surprised to see Next here, as Next is quite an ordinary high street band, high street brand. Next is decidedly passé, is very 90s. Sacare, TM Lewin, they do some very fine shirts, but they're on the pricey side, as you may have deduced. Okay, so I hope I've given you a flavour of Bond Street. Ooh, sale, well, I'm going in. They don't look happy. How morose they are. Well, I shan't become melancholic because I won't be wearing those glad rags. So here we're on Oxford Street, which is much longer, much broader. Zara is distinctly mid-market. Right, that's enough. Ooh, taking my life on my hands, breaking the red light. So that's Oxford Street. I'll switch off on Oxford Street. I'll do Oxford Street some other time. Say goodbye to Bond Street. It's down there.